Hello and welcome to the 15th Scouching Report for the 2020 NHL Draft. Today we're going to be looking at third-ranked North American skater, defenseman Jamie Drysdale. Drysdale is considered universally to be the best available defensive prospect in this year's draft, and to be honest, I can absolutely see why. But that being said, I do think that this year's draft is a little bit lighter in terms of talent for defensemen in general, which might be causing some of the higher level defense prospects available to be bumped up a little bit. And I think that kind of thing might be happening a little bit with Jamie Drysdale, so let's dig into why. If you've never seen a Scouching Report before, the way that we look at a player is we examine them through 5 different categories: think, move, get, pass, and shoot. Within each one of these categories, we give them a number and a letter grade, where the number indicates the overall tier of talent I saw within that player across the 7 games I tracked, and the letter indicates the overall consistency within that tier I saw across those 7 games. First, we look at the think category. And with Jamie Drysdale, it is very apparent that he is a two-way defender in the truest sense of that phrase. He plays very well positionally defensively, especially in transition, maintaining pretty good gaps with players in transition, not allowing forecheckers a tremendous amount of space to maneuver around him, and he can certainly get his stick right into passing lanes and shooting lanes to try to deflect pucks away from his goaltender. He has a really nice ability to control the pace of play pretty well, with really dynamic and maneuverable footwork that allows him to cut around the defensive zone, especially looking for open space. And while Drysdale might not be the most physical defender in this year's draft, which is not something I'd consider a downside, he tended to be more of an open ice defender focused on efficiently shutting down play without really putting himself out of position too much. On the offensive side of things, he was more than happy to jump into offensive rushes whenever he felt the time was right. He would push deep down the offensive wing looking for dangerous pass opportunities in front of the net, or getting pucks deep into the offensive zone on his own stick. When transitions were starting both offensively and defensively, he seemed to pick his spots really well as well, not pinching up too hard offensively to choke out breakouts and put himself out of position, but also not jumping into breakouts in the defensive zone either. He was usually a primary source of a defensive zone transition with control for the Erie Otters this year. And for defensemen, that's a major positive that you're looking for. You need your defenseman to be able to get the puck out of your own zone with control of it. However, for all the positives in this category, it's not all perfect for Drysdale in this category. For starters, I caught him going face down on the ice in front of his goaltender on 2-on-1s far too much. That is a technique that you often don't see in the National Hockey League. Players are too good at being patient, passing pucks around, and especially on a 2-on-1, the focus tends to be more clogging up that passing lane with your stick and your body and allowing the shooter to challenge the goaltender while preventing that cross-ice passing decision. And if you're flat down on the ice too much, really good offensive playmakers can put that puck right over you and right to their teammate on the other side of the net for a really dangerous scoring chance. And when pucks are loose in the defensive zone, I caught Drysdale doing the first thing that came to mind instead of the right decision. I really prefer defensemen to be able to make quick reads of a situation with the puck actually on their stick, whether it's find open ice, find a teammate, and the last resort should be to shoot the puck out of your own zone without control. I caught Jamie Drysdale doing that a little bit too much when there were some options, and for a player with as gifted a set of feet as Jamie Drysdale, I would really like him to be able to evade pressure much more effectively in his defensive zone, look for better reads, look for better options, and push more controlled zone breakouts in the defensive end. There were too many situations of Drysdale dumping pucks out of the defensive end, shooting pucks directly at the sideboards in his own end, or just getting his stick on a puck just to pass it to someone, and that someone turned out to be his opponent. And for a player with as gifted a set of feet as Drysdale has when he's at his best, I would like to see a little bit more intensity and agility and explosiveness in his own end. A few too many times I caught him too slow to get to loose pucks, getting into somewhat needless physical encounters with forecheckers, and from time to time allowing too much of a gap between himself and forecheckers, allowing them to just go right around him in the defensive end. So in the think category, I'm giving Drysdale a 1D. Overall, there are definitely inconsistencies here, and most of them revolve around his decision making. A little bit more patience over time, a little bit more explosiveness to create more space between him and forecheckers, and an ability to make quicker reads and move pucks to teammates would really take him a long way in this area. But Drysdale is a player who I think will be a defenseman that you don't really notice a whole lot for good reason. He's great with his stick in transition, he's really solid defensively, and there's just a lot to like here. Next we go to the move category, and this is the part of Drysdale's game that that a lot of people really like to point out. Drysdale is a very dynamic skater with really nice hands on him. He can control the pace of play very, very well. He does take a little bit of time to get to his top speed, but his backwards skating and his footwork in terms of finding open ice and just navigating around the ice is really, to me, the epitome of mobility. He's certainly at his best on his edges, maneuvering around the ice, especially when he's away from the puck, and he's really shown a great capability of maintaining those gaps between himself and forecheckers. It wasn't always perfect, but he certainly has more than enough talent to be very reliable in this area long term. And while he might not be the fastest guy on the ice all of the time, he more than makes up for that with his footwork and also really nice skill with his hands, and he's able to navigate around the ice with the puck especially well. And when it came to breaking out the puck on his own stick, he was perfectly able to get across defensive blue lines without really that much issue. However, there does need to be a little bit more explosivity in his step. Yeah, he doesn't need to be the fastest guy on the ice, and yes, he is an extremely mobile defender, but when it came down to things like loose pucks or pucks bouncing around the back of the net that he just couldn't chase down in time, or really giving him that higher gear to blow up the ice, leaving defenders in the dust, I think that could come a little bit of a ways with Drysdale, but this is a good category for him overall. So in the move category, I'm giving Drysdale a 1C. He's highly dynamic, he can really control the pace of play really efficiently. There is a major difference to me in a hockey player when you're talking about speed and mobility. And there's a lot of mobility that really comes down to Drysdale's exceptional footwork. And when you blend his skill with his footwork, there's a lot to really like with Jamie Drysdale's upside. So a bit more of an ability to generate speed very quickly, a little bit more willingness to get more physical quickly along the boards to grind play down or chase down loose pucks could really take Jamie Drysdale a long way, especially in the defensive end. He's not the defenseman that I'm really looking to be, this Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar style attacking defenseman, but having that capability in him to get up the ice more efficiently will allow him to push deeper into the offensive zone against better competition in the National Hockey League. Next, we have the get category. And to me with Drysdale, this is a tough one. He is certainly, without a doubt, a great controller of gaps in transition coming his way. His controlled defensive zone transition percentage of 44% is very, very good for a defenseman, especially a big-time minutes eater in the OHL. He gets his stick into passing lanes, he maintains gaps really well, and can break up possession really effectively. And when he does pick his spots to pinch up either on defensive blue lines or offensive blue lines, he does it with a lot of effectivity. He doesn't often leave his teammates out hanging and causing odd man rushes coming his way. He knows when to pick his spots, and he's very intelligent about it. He positions himself in the neutral zone really effectively and is able to stop breakouts in that area of the ice as well, and doesn't often relinquish a tremendous amount of ice to forecheckers in transition, which is something that you certainly need to see out of modern day NHL defensemen. On the downside, when things get really in tight towards his own net is where things might start to fall apart a little, which is not necessarily uncommon for smaller defensemen that play his style of game at this age. He can get caught tracking the puck a little bit too much, losing track of other forwards on the ice, which can lead to dangerous chances against as well. And there are times in transition where he just was far too passive. There's a difference between having good gap control in transition and actually picking a time to challenge that gap control and challenge that forechecker to try to get the puck off of him. A lot of times it felt like Drysdale was waiting for his opponent to move first rather than him challenging him, especially deep in the defensive zone. And a few times he was caught flat-footed and the forward would go around him and continue an offensive cycle. And Drysdale certainly does need to be more physically assertive. There wasn't a tremendous amount of times where I caught him really pinning guys against the boards and trying to grind play down to a halt. He was much more of an efficient transition defender, which is fine, but you will need to be more physically assertive if you're going to be a major two-way minutes-eating shutdown defender in the National Hockey League. So Jamie Drysdale gets a 2B in the get category. Away from the puck, he certainly has some work to do to become a premier shutdown defenseman. If we're only talking transition defense and gap control, he's certainly the best defenseman in this year's draft. But there are times when you do need to get physical along the boards and slow things down a little bit. As he gets older, more and more players will come at him with more and more speed, and he's going to need to be able to keep up with that or learn how to shut that down. So while he is a solid transitional defenseman, he can be a little bit soft deep in his own end. And I may be nitpicky here, but we're talking about a guy that may be going in the top 5 of this year's draft as a defenseman. And I think you have to be very careful about evaluating a defenseman that high in the draft and really understand what it is you're getting with him. I did come away away thinking that Drysdale's mental lapses, lack of physical assertiveness, a sometimes overwhelming amount of patience in the defensive zone, and a bit of an inability at times to clear the front of the net when play was collapsing around his own goalie, leads me to believe that there are some concerns in this category for Drysdale, but it's not the end of the world. Up next is the pass category. To say the least, Drysdale is an extremely strong passer, especially for a defenseman at his age that plays as much as he does. He makes stretch passes while skating backwards in the defensive zone on his edges look pretty easy. When it comes to breaking pucks out of the defensive zone, he's equally efficient whether he's passing pucks out of his own end or moving it on his own stick. But his pass statistics weren't really otherworldly relative to other defensemen I've been tracking this year. He completed 75% of his passes, and he was about in line with previously profiled defensemen William Wallander and Joni Jurmo when it came to pass attempts and completed passes per 60 minutes. And to me, he's not the attacking defenseman that someone like a William Wallander is, but he's certainly able to drive down the wing offensively and look for passing opportunities that can get very dangerous. There's a reason he was such an effective offensive defenseman at even strength this year. He is willing to pinch deep offensively and look for offensive chances. But if he's not going D to D or simply moving the puck around the ice and just being a play facilitator, he was at his best making passes out of his own zone to players in the neutral zone. Time and time again, I caught him making really excellent stretch passes out of his own zone, and I think that that's a valuable skill in the modern day NHL. There were some times where he could move pucks a little bit poorly, pass pucks directly to opponents, he would pass the puck to nobody at all, and there was a little bit too much of Drysdale dumping pucks off the glass out of the defensive zone for my taste. But when it comes to offensive transitions and playing in open ice, Drysdale really shines in this category. So in the pass category, I'm giving him a 1B. He makes very difficult passes look very easy. There are some times where he makes very simple situations seem very complicated. That's something that I think comes out of his game as he ages and watches more tape, and this is a player that I don't think will be in the NHL next season, maybe even not the next season after that, so he has plenty of time to refine this area of the game. His passing skill on the whole is very, very interesting, and he makes very difficult things look very easy. Finally, we look at the shoot category, and again, with defensemen, it's kind of hard to judge how they shoot the puck. With Drysdale, I'm not totally sure he's going to be a really high-level goal-scoring defenseman in the National Hockey League. It just doesn't strike me as a central part of his game. But he does have a nice, quick shot from the point, and he's certainly willing to use it often. In every single game I tracked since December, he had 4 or 5 shot attempts from low danger every single game. That's pretty noteworthy and gives you a relatively good indication of what kind of a defenseman you're dealing with here. He is willing to shoot the puck, but it's about on the same level as a Joni Jurmo from low danger. The funny thing was that he took 1 medium danger shot attempt throughout the whole 7-game period I tracked, and he scored. So maybe there's a little bit more potential for him as a goal scorer if he's willing to use his aggressive mindset and push into medium danger areas to shoot the puck a little bit, but his natural offensive instinct tended to be to stick more towards the boards and try to make a passing play from there rather than step up offensively and score. It's not something I'd necessarily coach into him over time, but it is something that might be a part of his toolkit that he could whip out from time to time in the NHL. So in the shoot category, I'm giving Drysdale a 2A. I'm not entirely sure what I can say is bad about his shot or great about his shot, but in general, he seems to be a reliable shooting option, and when you combine it with his natural offensive instincts down the wing to make dangerous passing plays in front of the net, there could be an interesting case here for an all-around offensive defenseman with really good defensive transition ability, which is something that I think any NHL team would like. So to wrap up these videos, we look at the best part of a player's game, the good part of a player's game, and the not so good part of a player's game. The best part of Jamie Drysdale's game is to me his puck moving ability all around the ice. Whether it's passing the puck or skating with it, there's a real gift here with Jamie Drysdale to work with moving forward. He's extremely mobile with or without the puck on his stick. He's got great skill to control the puck as he sees fit, controls pace really, really well around the ice, can spot teammates for really nice stretch passes out of his own zone, and when it just came to moving pucks around the ice, he was a very, very reliable quarterback for the line that he was playing on in Erie. The good part of Jamie Drysdale's game is his overall play in defensive transitions. His gap control, especially across blue lines and in the neutral zone, is excellent. There's no other way I can put it. Where things kind of fall apart is deep in the defensive zone, and when there's a little bit of chaos going around, he seems to lose track of play, lose track of other forecheckers, lose gap control, or give players too much of a gap. And with a little bit more physical assertiveness and explosivity, he could really close those gaps effectively and challenge forecheckers to separate them from the puck even more effectively than he already does. The not so good part really boils down to how surprised I was with his inconsistencies when it came to defensive decision making. It kind of felt like Drysdale was often making the first play that came to mind. Whatever got the puck out from in front of my goaltender is what I'm going to do. Whether it's chop away away at a puck and send it right back to defenders high in the defensive zone, shoot pucks directly at the boards off to the side, or just dumping pucks off the glass and sending it right back to opponents in the neutral zone. It felt kind of panicky at times, and that's something that I think will need refinement. And he certainly has all the tools to overcome it. His footwork is great, his first few steps are good, and if they can improve, he can create separation, use his skill to find more open ice, find teammates, and get the puck to them to maintain possession. So with a little bit more patience and training, I think he can sort this part of the game out. I'm not saying Jamie Drysdale does not deserve to be a top 10 pick in this year's draft. It's just a matter of his age and the role in which he's playing and what his results are. And there were some things deep in the defensive zone that I think will definitely need to come a few steps if he's going to be a premier NHL defenseman, which I certainly think he could be. So overall, I'm giving Jamie Drysdale a 1C. He's a player that I was a little bit surprised to come away with the reservations that I did. He has gifted footwork and mobility around the ice, especially in the defensive zone, and he makes difficult plays passing the puck look very easy. But his willingness to use that footwork and play with determination and intensity was a little bit inconsistent to me, which was something that surprised me. But he is excellent with his stick in transition and managing gaps between himself and the opponent, and that is the way that you play defense in the modern day NHL, in my opinion. And while Drysdale can be a little bit too patient from time to time, when play is coming through the neutral zone, he is certainly a dangerous player to be playing against if you're carrying the puck against him. And while his decisions seemed hasty from time to time, when things were calm and he could play under his own pace, he was an excellent passer and a gifted passer when getting pucks out of the defensive zone. So all in all, I would say he's definitely the most well-refined and intelligent two-way defender available in this draft. And with improvements over time, he could be a really special two-way defender with nice offensive upside. He's not the most exciting defensive player I've ever seen, but he's a very, very mobile player who you often might not notice for the positive things that he's doing. He's not the most physical guy in the world. He's more willing to use his stick to break up play, which you don't see on highlight reels a tremendous amount. He makes very nice stretch passes from time to time, and he can push up offensively to create dangerous chances on his own stick. So while I don't believe that he's a player that I would particularly look at in the top 5 of this year's draft, he is most definitely going to be drafted in the top 10, and I would be more than happy to add him at any pick between the 6th and 10th overall selections. If he can calm things down defensively with the puck a little bit over time, if he can build on his explosiveness and agility to close those gaps really deep in his defensive zone a little bit better, and if he can get a bit stronger and more physically assertive to challenge players deep in the defensive zone and tie them up if his stick isn't doing the work, he could be a premier minutes-eating NHL defenseman no problem. So that's all for this Scouching Report. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon, where you get access to a Discord server, multiple data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects, exclusive data visualizations, as well as plenty of other goodies. Or you could pick up some merchandise at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. All the links are in the description below. So that's it, and thanks for watching.